Good morning and welcome, everyone. My name is Haley Legassi, and I am the lead educator at Joyful Learning. We are excited today to be here for our Pink Shirt Day virtual author visit with Grayson Smith. Pink Shirt Day is a day that we wear pink to school or to work or wherever we go to show that we stand up against bullying, that we don't think that bullying is okay. So that's a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. But we're also today going to talk about diversity and inclusion, which are two big words. So diversity is the idea that we are all different. And so what we want to do today is we want to celebrate the fact that we are not all the same, that we all have different skills and abilities. We have different things that are easy for us and different things that are hard for us. So a little bit of that will come out in the book with Grayson. All right. So Grayson, would you like to introduce yourself and a little bit about your book?
Yeah, I can do that. My name is Grayson. I'm very excited to be with you guys today. Thank you so much for coming and being part of this today. I find that it's a real gift when people decide to give me half an hour or an hour of their time. And so I recognize that when we multiply all the time that we're spending today, you guys are all giving me such a great gift. So I'm very thankful for that. And I also want to just say before we get started, I live in a very tiny little town, It's right at the southwest corner of British Columbia. It's as far south and as far west as you get in North America, pretty much, in Canada. And it's called Tawasin. And so this land is the traditional homeland of the Tawasin First Nation. And they've actually demonstrated a lot of inclusion, have been a great example of welcoming newcomers and inviting them and figuring out ways to collaborate with them. And that's one of the cool things we're going to talk about with the book. Before we get started, I just want to say hi to the Tawasin First Nation for letting me be here. As I said, my name is Grayson. I'm a police officer. I'm also a children's book author, and I'm a children's book publisher. And it all started a few years ago in a way that's a little bit unique, unexpected. I think not too many police officers are children's authors. And not too many children's authors are police officers. What we do, or what I've done in the last little while, has been experimental about trying something that's unexpected. And things that happen that are unexpected is another theme we're going to look at while we're looking at the book. Yeah, I think I might be able to answer some questions about those different aspects later on. But yeah, that's a little bit about.
Awesome. Thank you, Grayson, for sharing. Now, the other thing we're going to do when we read is we are going to make connections, because when we read, it's really helpful if we think about how we can understand the book by making connections to our own lives. I wondered, have any of you talked about making connections at school, making connections in books that you're reading? Put up your hand if you've talked about that before. Oh, I see I see lots of hands. That's great. So one of the things we do in my class is we go like this to show like a chain or a connection. So when we're reading a book, instead of everyone shouting out, I have a connection, we show like this. So if you have a connection while you are reading, just go like this and we'll watch for this. All right. So Grayson, would you like to read us your story?
Yeah, I would love to read the story, but would it be okay if I spend a few minutes talking about the story first?
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. You do whatever you want.
Okay, sounds good. So I'm excited to be part of this event today, partly because I think Pink Shirt Day is very cool. And I know that a lot of you know what Pink Shirt Day is about. I think it's primarily in Canada, but let me just see about the screen sharing thing. Here we go. Pink shirt. So as we know, Pink Shirt Day started when a young boy was wearing a pink shirt and he was bullied for it. And that's as simple as the beginnings of this. And there was people who came around and said, hey, we don't accept this type of behavior. And so what they started doing was wearing pink shirts as well. And what's cool about that story that happened for Pink Shirt Day, it's unexpected. It was unexpected at the time. It was unexpected for a boy to wear a pink shirt. And people sometimes get confused, scared, uncertain about things when unexpected things happen. And sometimes when something unexpected happens to us, we might tend to be defensive, or we might say, oh, that's different. I don't want to do that, or I don't want to be part of that. And Pink Shirt Day is about changing our expectations and allowing people to be different and to include them. And including people means to make space for them. And in Pink Shirt Day, we're all wearing shirts saying we're going to make space for people who are different and for things that are maybe unexpected in our classrooms. And in terms of being a Norseman being in the classroom, that's really unexpected. I don't think too many people expect that a large hairy character would be in the second grade classroom. But that's sort of an unexpected idea that I had when I was thinking about writing this book. I was thinking about life in grade 2 because there's a picture of my wife. Her name is Mrs. Smith, and she was a grade 2 teacher. And she would come and she would tell me all about the different types of things that happen in a grade 2 classroom. And lots of them had to do with classroom relationships. And when somebody does something unexpected, it can make the classroom feel a little tense. And sometimes relationships get a little bit tense in those situations. And I thought to myself, what would happen if I made up a character and introduced an idea of a character who does not appear to belong in a classroom? And what are some lessons that we could draw from that? And so I started writing this story a few years ago, and I thought I'll write the story and then I will draw the pictures. And after the first picture, I realized I'm not a good illustrator. And I'm very glad that I didn't decide to try to illustrate the pictures. Thumbs up. Just show me your thumbs if you have ever written a story. Oh, I'm seeing some thumbs. Good. Now, thumbs up if you have written a story and would like to be the illustrator as well. Okay, there you go. Yes, I see lots of authors and illustrators, and you guys, that's great. But I realized that I needed help because I couldn't do the illustrations as well as I wanted to. So what I started doing was I looked around. I actually had a few different people provide me some illustrations. And here's a couple different examples of ideas that I had originally or that people were going to give for me for Norseman Norm. And I eventually settled on a guy here named Timothy Banks. And he is the fellow who illustrated this book in the end. And he came up with these different ideas and he let me choose some of these ideas. And I found there that we were able to collaborate. And because he had a strength of drawing and I had a story, it made the story that much better to have somebody who had a different skill than me. And this is just one example of looking for diversity, different skills, different abilities, and how when you put those two things together, it makes something that's much better. And so in classrooms, often that looks different people being good at different things or having a different perspective. It makes a team or a classroom that much better or stronger. This was the end. He did some sketches, and by the end, we had Norseman Norm. And I'm going to read the book here in a minute, and then I can go back to some stuff about policing or about publishing stuff. But yeah, this story is about inclusion. It's about including and excluding. And as we've done some predictions, I also want you to keep your eyes open, making connections. I think we've used that symbol before. If you make a connection, you can just show me your hands like this, and I'll be able to see that. If you make a connection with including and excluding, sometimes when I go to schools, I'm usually in a library or a gymnasium, and I get to see people show me inclusion and exclusion. And including, when you bring somebody in for a hug or I guess not now these days, but soon we'll be back to that, where you bring someone in for a hug or you include them into your group or you invite them to play, that's including. And excluding, if you put your hands together like this, you'll show an X. I want you to keep your eyes open for including behavior and excluding behavior as I read the book. Okay? There's a Norseman in the classroom. All the children are very pleased because they finally get to go back to school. They've spent 9 long weeks doing chores and being bored and having no fun at all. Is that how you guys are in summer break? Let's see. But now it's time to be back in the classroom. They get to see all their friends, look around, see all your friends. Most of them are 1 year older, and they all get to be in a brand new grade. Their new teacher is Mrs. Wallump. They've all heard stories about how kind she is. The children take their seats. Who's ready to learn some fun new things? Eager hands go up, but suddenly, a thump, a crash, a creak, and a slam. What is that at the door? It has wild eyes and huge hands. It has spiky hair. It looks hungry. The littlest student runs behind Mrs. Wallump, who even in all of her Wallumpishness looks small next to the fearsome creature. Children, meet Norm. your new classmate. He is a Norseman. Norseman in the classroom? This Norseman named Norm is too big for the desk and chair. Nobody can see over his huge, hairy shoulders. When Mrs. Wallump tells a funny story, his laugh is so loud that the children have to cover their ears. He can't do the art projects right either because his fingers are too clumsy and he gets glue everywhere. He turns the pages too hard and accidentally rips them out. And he wants to look at all the books. And when he gets excited, watch out. He almost breaks the teacher's desk and he makes everybody's lunches fall off the shelf when he jumps up and down. Mrs. Wallump sees that some of the children don't like Norm. Be kind to him. He's just young, like you. This huge Norseman is just young? Can you imagine what he'll be like when he's full grown? Why, he won't fit in the school. If he does, he'll crush all the students and all the teachers too. Look how much he brings for lunch. Look how hard he kicks the ball at recess. Look how bad he is at math. The children think that Norm is ruining their school year. He takes up too much of the hallway and takes too long at the water fountain. This Norseman does not belong in the classroom. The children tell him that he should not come back. At the end of the day, Norm walks home alone, and the children can hear him sniffling the whole way. Before I continue, I just want to take a quick sec. I'll get you guys to do this now. You don't need to make a lot of noise if you're in a big group, but show me with your face, if I can see your face. Show me with your face how you think Norm is feeling right now. That's right. I see Oh, that's right. I see some sad faces there. And show me with your hands. I remember these ideas of including and excluding. Show me with your hands how you think the children are treating Norm right now. Yeah, that's right. You guys are on it. Let's keep reading. The next day, everything is back to the way it was. The children glue crafts, read books, and eat their lunches in peace. But when Mrs. Wallump has to hang something high on the wall, she can't reach, no matter how hard she tries. And when she tells another funny story, it seems too quiet in the classroom. And the games outside at recess are too tame, and the children get bored at how slow the ball is kicked. The children look around the classroom at their nicely put together art and their correctly completed math problems. And they wish that Norm was back. They all write him a letter and ask him to come back to school. After all, how else will he learn his math? Or learn to make lovely art? Or share his extra large desserts at lunchtime? When Norm arrives at school the next morning, they all gather around and each apologize to him and cheer as he hangs the something high on the wall. They laugh as hard as he does at the next funny story. They make sure their lunches are on the floor instead of high on a shelf. And they take turns helping Norm with his math and with the tricky bits of his art. Soon he fits right in. The children hardly notice his bristly hair and his crazy antics. Besides, who knows when else Norm might come in handy? Maybe the classroom is just the place for a Norseman. The end. All right. Should I hand it back to you?
Sure. Thank you so much for reading. All right. So thank you, Grayson. That is a great book. How many of you, show me with your hands, how many of you made a connection while you were listening to the book? I see a number of people have their hands up or they're showing us the connection signal. Yeah, I see a lot in the chat. Some people sharing connections says that she is tall like the Norsemen. And Marlowe says that their connection was that the Norseman was not sharing the food and we can't share food right now. So that's a good connection. Crystal says, I've been excluded before, and our teacher also teaches grade 2. So lots of connections, and we all have different types of connections to the book, different ways that we can understand how the characters are feeling in the book. Now, one of the things that I wanted to do before we talk a little bit about the book, or a little more about the book, I wanted to share my connection to the book. And it has to do with the fact that I connect to Norm because Norm is different. Now, my connection isn't the same as Norm. It's not that I'm a big, hairy barbarian that's way bigger than all the other kids in my class. So it's not, my difference isn't because I look different. So when I was growing up, I was different than other kids, but not because I looked different, but because my brain was different. So my brain worked differently and it was different than other kids. And sometimes other kids didn't understand why I would interrupt their sentences or why I couldn't just sit still or why I couldn't find all the things that I needed. Because my brain is really good at some things. It's really good at creating really fun stuff. It's really good at a lot of things. It's really good at making this whole event happen. But my brain also sometimes has a hard time doing the simple little things that other people find easy. For example, on Sunday, I made a grilled cheese sandwich, made the entire grilled cheese sandwich, flipped both sides, it was all toasted, and I went to eat it and there was no cheese in it. Because I forgot the cheese. So our brains all work differently. And sometimes I think that we treat each other not very well sometimes because people are different than us and we don't understand why they're different or why they're acting the way they are. So when it's a physical difference and something you can see, it's fairly easy to understand, but sometimes it's not. So one of the things in diversity that we are talking about is recognizing that people around us are different from us. And you know what? It's good to be different because if we were all the same, life would be boring. The world would be boring. It takes all different types of people. Sometimes when we see people who are different than us, we think that they're just different. We don't see the things that are the same because Norm may look very different than the rest of the class, but he has things that are similar about him. So there's a similarities and differences. Grayson, can we do a few questions with you?
Would love to, yeah.
So one of the big questions that came up a number of times is why did you decide to start writing?
Why did I decide to start writing?
Like actual real books for other people to read, not just like stories for yourself.
I see. Oh, yeah. So actually, I started writing about 8 or 9 years ago. I wrote a story called Flight of the Mite, and it was about a little bug, and it was meant to be a gift to my niece. And when I partnered with an illustrator, she spent so much time and had made such beautiful illustrations that we decided, why don't we see if more than just one person wants to see the book? And so I decided I'll get a business license and I'll say that I'm a publisher, and that way it's not a self-published book. Then it's published by a publisher, even though I was the publisher. And it's interesting when you start to just do something, you find that suddenly you become that thing. I think if some of you might have been to Joyful Learning's visit with Ken Nesbitt, he came up with that same thing. If you want to be an author, all you have to do is write. And so when I decided to start writing books as an expression of something fun and different than what I normally do, because my day job as a police officer doesn't always allow me to be silly or have to become very professional and serious. And so, yeah, part of writing kids' books was to express that silliness that I love.
Awesome. Thank you. So it's fun to write silly stories and to do those things. And I made a connection when you said that because we have Flight of the Mite here. So there's other books that you guys can read too. Now, another question. Do you have any pets?
No, I have three small children,
Same
and
thing.
all boys, and they're as wild as animals. So that counts, maybe. Hi, Joe. Hi, Caleb. Don't be embarrassed. It's just your dad.
Okay, great. So another question is why did you choose it to be a Norseman? Why is it a Norseman in the classroom?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was trying to think of a person who doesn't appear to belong in a grade 2 classroom. And so actually I came up at first with a Viking. There's a Viking in the classroom, but then when I started doing some research into what a Viking was, I realized Vikings were as much of a people group as they were a type of person, their occupation. To go on Viking or to be Viking meant to go and raid and cause trouble and cause grief. And if you ever do some research into Norse culture and Vikings, the Vikings were feared and they were scared and they took whatever they wanted and they were real aggressive people. And so I changed that idea to a Norseman because I didn't want in my story for the main character to come in and cause trouble on purpose. I just wanted him to appear as though he didn't belong and to have some of those characteristics of being wild and very different than the other students. So that's why I went with a Norseman.
Cool. So also in the virtual classroom, I won't show it to you now, but when you do check it out, I created a whole room about Norsemen. So that's where you can find more information about Norsemen and coloring pages for the book too. Have you written other books? This is Miss Kirkham's class wants to know. Have you written other books and what are they? Or do you have a series or anything like that?
Yeah, so I've written a number of children's books, and my favorite one, oh, I don't have it with me here. My favorite one that I recently written is a book that has one word in it, and the word is run. And I wrote that just last year it came out, and basically every page is the word run on it, and it has different meanings of the word run. And I find that interesting because I was able to weave together a whole story when the only word on each page was run, about a little guy who runs. And yeah, so I've written those kind of stories. I have also written a second book that includes Norseman Norm, and it's called A Viking, a Vandal, a Visigoth. It's about three brothers who come to a grade 3 classroom and they cause a little bit of grief. You know how I just discussed how a Viking is actually a little bit more of an activity than it is a person. And so we get to learn a little bit more about direct, unkind behavior versus in Norseman, just talking about different behavior and including. And as I said, I started publishing children's books because I realized that if I had a story as a police officer, if I had stories to tell, there's other people who also had stories to tell. And so we connected with a whole bunch of different authors whose job is not necessarily being an author. We have stories like Dragons and Hot Sauce. The author of this is actually a lawyer. He lives down in Portland. We have this one here, 6 Stinky Feet and a Sasquatch. And this person is a marketer. And we have One Too Many. This person is a web design. Oh, sorry. Too Many Kisses is a web designer. And so what I found was that lots of different people have story ideas. And I wanted to give them a voice with the publishing. So we've connected with authors who just want to do some fun stuff, some funny stuff, but we also have connected with some indigenous groups and educational resources. So we produce a whole range of different books. So it's not all of the books that I've worked on are mine as the author, but I also do this publishing. Yeah.
So the last question is, how exactly do you find time to be a writer and a police officer? And then really quick on that one too, why did you want to become a police officer as well?
Sure. Okay. How do I find time? I try not to watch TV too much. That's step one. If you want to get more things done with your life, stay away from the television or have little amounts of television because otherwise you'll just get caught up in. Yeah, I think what it is as a police officer, my job is actually I investigate car crashes, bad car crashes, and some of the stuff that I have to deal with can be quite sad. And so I found that writing kids' books is a great way, not only for me to sort of express some of the silliness of who I am and how I like to act, but also is a great way to invest energy into other areas. And I think that some of the children's book stuff that I've done is actually helping me. It's helping me be a better police officer because I'm able to have a varied perspective. And yeah, I think I prioritize it in terms of helping me be a more balanced person. So I think that's important. And when it comes to why I wanted to be a police officer, because it's the greatest job in the whole world. It's awesome. And it's really fun because you're not sure what you're going to experience. You never know what you're going to see. And oftentimes kids, they ask me like, what's the thing that you use the most? What's the tool that you have? Because I usually wear this big belt that has all kinds of tools on it and radio. And there's people are always interested in a gun and I have all kinds of different things. And I always say to people, what do you think the most important tool that a police officer has? And this is it right here. It's a pen. The pen is the most important tool that a police officer has. And people say, why is that? It's because the pen, I have to take notes at what I see. And if I don't write down what I've seen, or if I don't write a report properly, then all the work that we've done as police officers doesn't mean anything. And so writing reports is something that I do every day. I write and I use a pen every day. I hope to never have to use a gun. And I've been a police officer for 13 years and I've never had to use any of my weapons that people are sometimes interested in, but I use my pen every day, all the time. And so that's overlap as well, where if you're a police officer, you often have to do a lot of writing. So
Awesome. Thank you very much for coming and being with us today. Now, maybe next year on Pink Shirt Day, your other book will be ready and we can do a Pink Shirt Day event as your launch party for that.
yeah, that would be
That-
great. Before we go, I also just want to say one thing, can I share my screen again?
Go for it.
If this work. I know that a lot of people have come to today's thing. Is that showing the Special Olympics?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. One of the things that I've been able to do as a police officer is partner with a group called Special Olympics. And because I live in BC, it's with British Columbia. But the Special Olympics is a group that takes inclusion and diversity very seriously. And that's why I love them. So what they do is they say, if you're not typically interested in sports, if you've not been included in the past, if you've never had the chance to learn a sport, we want you to come. If you have different abilities or if you have limited abilities in different ways, we want you to come and play sports. And every time I sell one of my books, I give money specifically to the Special Olympics. And the last thing I wanted to say, because I know there's a number of teachers here, I am always interested in connecting with people about their classroom cultures. And I would love to, so this will be primarily for people who are on the live stream, but I would love to connect with any teacher who wants to email me. You email me before the end of the week. I'm going to do a draw and I would love to give a case of books to your classroom. And so I'm going to do a draw and pick one teacher or educator and make sure that each one of your students is able to have a signed copy. And I'll connect with you about that. We'll do the draw over the weekend and then I'll reconnect with people. But I'd love to hear stories about people's classroom cultures, about ways that they're including one another or including newcomers and things like that. I think it's important. So.
Awesome. Thank you for that. That is a wonderful prize. So we are going to wrap up here. Really hope that you send us your pictures of your coloring books, your activity pages, and all of those things so that we can stay connected. I know there's a lot of people who are going to be watching this as a recording later. And so we didn't get a chance to interact. So if you're able, I would love to see those. And then I'd love to share them out for other people to see as well so that we feel like we're all part of something. Because I think right now it feels like we're all separate and it feels like we're not very connected. And one of the things I'm trying to do at Joyful Learning is bring people together, even though it's virtually, but bring people together and make them feel like they're part of something. So I hope that you come and check us out for other events and we'll get some more up on the calendar soon. So I'm just going to give everyone a chance to say goodbye real fast.
Thank you very much for your time and attention. I really appreciate it. This was something new and exciting for me as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for coming. Big waves to all of you.